what has happened is that as this plague of these Satanists at the highest levels have gone around creating communist dystopias all over the world and fouling these sacred sites, they've essentially turned humanity into a mindless machine, a mindless economic machine of warring tribes that are parasitic on the ecosystem, that destroy their water supplies and taint their food with poison, that blacken their skies with pollution. And do you see now how it is that these people are actually creating like really, really low frequency vibratory versions of the earth? Because all the pollution creates a lot of death and disease, and it doesn't create high vibes. All the while they're doing all this low vibe shit. They treat human beings like batteries, and they have been for centuries. Only we figured it out. Now it's important to note the way that if we're going to talk about spiritual warfare, the way that these Satanists have used these really, really high levels of security clearance and really, really high levels of large amounts of money and resources to create technology that they've kept from the public through things like non-disclosure agreements and above top secret contracts. All the while, what's happening all over the earth is that technology is essentially being used to take over an ecosystem, despite the fact that it's destroying these ecosystems. I mean, which these people believe that as they do this, every place that they go, as they foul these sacred sites and extract all the resources and destroy the ecosystems, that all the death that it's causing is being sacrificed to Satan. That's why they don't stop. That's why they keep going. And that what's being done in China is essentially what they would like to do all over the world, where they're essentially completely decimating and destroying their ecosystems to where they're unlivable for thousands upon thousands of years through something called the bioaccumulation of what are known as anthropogenic or man-made toxic chemicals that like stack on top of each other, like stick to each other and like create massive layers of these molecules in the water that make it unlivable for microbiological life. The propaganda in the media, I already said that. The pollution in the water, other than just the fluoride, we're talking mind-altering pollution. Okay, the pollution in the air, the electromagnetic frequencies of the cell phone towers, all these things create all these different spiritual layers over the truth of our non-local consciousness and our non-local entanglement to all reality. Remember what I said. They got deep underground military bases like under coliseums and stuff like that. Okay, under certain buildings and stuff in cities, and these things connect. Okay, they use satellites and stuff to do their bidding. Satellites can be weaponized, you guys. And communist China has gone as far as to weaponize it and become one of the most ruthless and evil forces in the world. Same thing with many of the lamestream mockingbird media outlets, because they're doing the bidding in places of institutions like the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Rothschilds, the central banking systems, etc. Spiritual warfare. So that they could be sacrificed in occultic rituals and shit. So that they could maintain these low frequency states of consciousness on the planet. So now let's talk about how it is that we have won and are winning this spiritual war. As I said before, there are two different schools of thought, or two different versions of the ancient Egyptian belief system. One is the stuff I'm talking to you about with the Temple of Set, the evil Satanism stuff, and the other is the Osiris, or the Ra, Law of One type mentality. Okay, and what's important to grasp here is that both of these schools of thought are based off of the understanding of all of this occultic stuff, of all these different versions of Earth and reality, all these different stargates and dimensions, these sacred sites, how they all intertwine and interrelate to different versions of the Earth, etc., etc. Okay, that's the reason why pyramids were built on these ley lines, because they were going into these pyramids and they were actually using it to heighten the frequency of their consciousness, in combination with things like nanometals like monoatomic gold, in combination with things like certain astrological and star alignments, in combination with certain things like large amounts of psychedelic plants. Okay, and the psychedelic plants were actually the most ancient currency. They were the most valuable thing in the ancient world. Okay, that's the reason why Christ was so revered in some of these higher circles, because of the levels that he was able to go shamanically with these higher frequencies and these plant substances. And he was able to just do it and be like, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And trust me, when you do a psychedelic, you're going to be like, oh my God. And Christ is just kind of, shrugging off. Yeah, it's beautiful. So there's two ways of using these plants. One is to expand your own consciousness and then do all this fear-based consciousness where you control the masses, like what Ramses was doing in Egypt when Moses came in and whooped his ass. Now, one thing you got to remember is this, you guys. Moses grew up understanding all this magical stuff, the use of these plants, the use of these monoatomic golds and all these nanometals and stuff like that, the use of the pyramids. He understood all of that. And because he understood all of that, he was able to stand up to Ramses in a way of in a magical way. That's why this whole thing of Ramses, had a snake appear in front of him, and Moses threw down his staff and it turned into a bigger snake that killed it. This is like next level magic, interdimensional stuff. Okay, and essentially it's actually the battling of the minds. It's the battling of spirits and of souls. Okay, and these electromagnetic fields that were these large electromagnetic fields on the planet at the time that were dictating which direction the Earth was going to go in a larger timeline sense. Okay, and because Satanism, because evil is so much weaker than good, obviously good always wins. God always wins. And Moses acted like a vessel for divine forces when he took these really large substances at places like Sinai. Okay, then he ended up affecting the timeline in a way that Ramses could not mess with. And that's why there were all these plagues and stuff, was because that Ramses was creating really, really low frequencies in the community, and he was doing so by sacrificing slaves and killing people and all this slavery, all these low frequencies, and it all kind of snapped back on him when Moses did his high frequency thing. Okay, essentially what we were witnessing is the ecosystem responding to all this low frequency vibes, and then a really, really high frequency vibe neutralizing all of it. And in this way, Moses moved the Israelites out of Egypt, so created essentially a miracle, and in the process raised the frequency of the consciousness of the planet forever. To where he kind of did something similar to what Christ did, where he ended up altering the timeline of the earth toward a more positive outcome through his actions, through his choices, right? Through his high frequency state of mind, where he realized he was his body, he was not his body, he was his soul, he was his spirit, he was non-local consciousness. So the elite, the Illuminati, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, they rigged the entirety of the planet through death magic, through this ancient set version of ancient Egyptian magic, and they're essentially a bunch of kids playing with power tools. They didn't quite realize what they were doing. If they did, they would have realized how stupid what they were doing actually was, because now they're going to be trapped in their evil dimension that they created for eternity. They're essentially going to be in hell for eternity because of the choices that they made. You see, they're never going to get a chance to go into these higher frequencies of consciousness because of all the choices that they made, whereas everybody else that didn't make such evil choices gets to experience this higher level ascended version of the earth, where all of the people on the planet end up uniting together in like a love state, and we transform the planet, we transform our societies, we transform from caterpillars and bodies to spiritual butterflies in mass. But they don't get to experience that. Okay. Now, how this was done was through, like I said, understanding this shamanic lineage stuff, understanding this magic stuff. Okay. Understanding this ancient Egyptian stuff, which I did all the research. Okay. I did like seriously, like over a decade of research to be able to understand all this and be able to tell you all this. And it is for that reason that I was recruited into the super soldier program. And there's many other super soldiers other than myself. But because I put this conceptual Rubik's Cube together, the forces of God and of light, of positivity, work through all of us, not just myself, but everybody involved. Donald Trump, most certainly. Donald Trump's God's president, man, I'm telling you. And in the process, the consciousness of the planet, the collective state of mind of the species changed forever, especially with the Q movement. And now, and this is where it gets really interesting, you guys, if you look at all the large turning points throughout history, what has changed humanity more than anything? It has been a change of mind, an evolution in our thinking, whether it be the Renaissance, whether it be things like the information age or whatever. These have been a change in our minds, okay, in a way that we look at reality, right? So this Q movement, this understanding of this idea of these higher spiritual planes and the way that these people have weaponized them and the way that they're using black magic to control people's minds and the way that they've essentially rigged the economies to create a monopoly for themselves, all this stuff is coming out. And this is what the apocalypse is all about, is the lifting of the veil during a time of mass deception.